Ball. Tonight's Candidates Forum is going to be played on Northampton Community Television Channel 15, October 28th and 29th at 7 p.m. and October 30th at 3 p.m. So make a note of that. Tell your friends. And in addition, I want to call your attention to other events. Next Tuesday on October 28th at the JFK Middle School, there will be a league-sponsored forum on the ballot questions. That will be at JFK beginning at 7 o'clock. And the next night, again at JFK on the 29th, Wednesday the 29th, the Gazette is sponsoring a forum for the city clerk candidates, for the write-in candidates for the city clerk. And now I want to tell you that this is a very tight schedule, and we're getting the candidates, all 19 of them, and their representatives, up in 3 groups. And the first group are the trustees for Smith Vocational and the school committee at large. The next group will be the city council candidates, and the third group will be city treasurer and mayor. The new location was to encourage Smith students to attend. And I don't know if they're going to. They may show up. Oh, good. Oh, good. If there's any campaign literature or anything, please leave it outside for people to pick up later rather than distributing it here. And the other thing is, we have to be out of here by 9 o'clock. We are being moved out by Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, which is going to be showed here. Actually, if you want to stay and watch the movie, I think it's okay. But if you want to continue talking to the candidates, I think we can do it upstairs in the lobby there, informally. Now, the candidates have 2 minutes for opening statements and 2 minutes to answer a question. They've been given 1 question ahead of time, not much ahead of time. And if there is extra time, we'll take questions from the audience, and I hope there is. If they take less than their 2 minutes for the answers to the questions, there may be extra time. I think we should, what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll let everybody give their opening statements from the different groups, from the school groups. And they're going to have to tell me, they pick numbers. What number? I guess you're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4?
I was 2.
You were 2, and you're sitting in the wrong seat. Well.
I'm sitting in the right seat.
Oh well. Okay, let's begin with opening statements.
Oh, I start?
Not if you're number 2.
Trustees. Yeah. Would you like me to start?
Yes, okay, yes. I hope you appreciate the informality / disorganization of this. It's supposed to make everybody feel at ease.
Good evening. My name is Marie Wechter, and my husband David Bourbeau is a trustee of Smith School. He couldn't be with you tonight, so he's prepared a 2-minute statement for me to read on his behalf, and thank you for the opportunity. In 1998, the newly elected Board of Trustees met for a day-long retreat to discuss their individual goals and to try to come to some agreement on priorities. We agreed that we wanted to see a drive toward higher standards, especially through better integration of academic and shop instruction. We agreed that long-delayed maintenance needed to be put on a timeline, and that whenever possible, school-wide projects be worked into the curriculum with work done by students as part of their training. We agreed we wanted to see every shop outfitted with up-to-date machinery and equipment. By day's end, we had adopted a working mission statement to make Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School the best vocational school in Massachusetts into the 21st century. 5 years later, Smith School is taking a leading role in the state. Our students are winning gold, silver, and bronze medals, as well as substantial scholarships at state and national competitions. While several of our shop instructors are helping the Department of Education develop new testing specific to vocational schools. Best of all, the entire school community is working together to make improvements despite 4 years of shrinking budgets. Let me give you an example. We wanted to build a new computer-aided design lab but couldn't afford the $100,000 or so it would cost. The shop teachers who would most benefit from the lab decided to build it themselves. They took down old walls, put up new ones, wired and networked the lab with machinery downstairs, and did the finish work, including modern window treatments. The lab is equipped with the latest G4 computers, and the total cost was $43,000, thanks to the teachers who volunteered nights and weekends to see it through. This lab is one of the most important places on campus, and it's a pleasure to see the students so engaged in their work there. The most important duty of the trustees is to hire the administrative leader of the school. In this, I believe we have excelled. Since hiring Dr. Lamas 2 years ago, our dreams for improvement are reaching fruition. Projects we hoped would be tackled in 5 to 10 years are already complete. I can say without hesitation that Smith School is on a roll. Watch for notices of open houses and come see for yourselves. I'm sure you will be as impressed as I am. I am asking for your vote because I've been dedicated to the forward progressive movement that is leading to Smith's becoming a first-class technical institution, and I know I still have more to give. We need to keep the momentum alive. Thank you.
Actually, it would be better if nobody applauded, because then we'll have more time.
Good evening, my name is John Cotton. In November of 2001, I was elected to the Smith Board of Trustees. And with the leadership of the present superintendent and my fellow trustees, we've been able to guide the future of the school in a positive way. This is an ongoing task. We have witnessed marked improvement in attitude of staff, students, and teachers. While we are moving forward, an example of this summer, 28 teachers and staff gave up 3 days of their summer vacation to attend a meeting to ready the school for the start of the coming year. All the teachers gave their time non-recompensed. Others not able to be present were calling daily to stay posted on current developments. This year is the 10-year evaluation of the school. It is happening now as I speak. I look forward to an excellent report. I want to be part of making Smith School the best school in the state. To have all students enjoy the opportunities presented for learning is most important. And I have a vested interest. For this year, my son is a freshman at the school. Thank you.
I have been involved at Smith Vocational High School for over 10 years. While our sons attended and graduated from Smith, I participated in the PTO, the school council, and was then elected to the Board of Trustees. I have been teaching in Northampton for 21 years. Because of my teaching experience, I have known some of our students since elementary school. This gives me the opportunity to stay in touch with the students and to get their ideas and views about the school. This also happens with the faculty, who I feel have the trust in me to also talk about issues of any concern. Even with a tight budget, we have been able to keep our classrooms and shops supplied. We are updating the curriculum, and in the near future, we'll be putting it all online. We will be the first vocational school in the state to be doing this. Our teachers continue with their professional development work, and our administrators are keeping current with any changes from the state. If elected for my 4th term in November, I will continue the progress Smith Voc has made. Our CAD/CAM lab is being used by several departments. Our farmhouse renovation is almost done, and we are also looking forward to working with Habitat for Humanity. Our MCAS score shows how hard our students and faculty are working. 96% of our seniors passed MCAS, 93 at graduation, and another 3% this fall. These are outstanding results for a vocational school to have, considering that our students take the same test as the Northampton High School students take. Remember, our students are in academic class half the time of a regular high school. Also, our FFA and VICA clubs continue to inspire students to grow and mature into responsible adults. And our students continue to inspire us. Please vote for Sue Ruthier on November 4th. Thank you.
And John. Yes, if everyone puts the microphone close to them, it won't hurt anything. It'll be good.
Probably don't even need it if I really speak up. I'll try to. Hi. First of all,
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum and the fact that it will be televised. My name is John B. Lynn, and I'm the challenger, not the incumbent, running for a seat on the Board of Trustees of Smith Vocational School, a school that I retired from and worked for 18 years. And yes, it's true, 2 years ago I had a student who won a gold medal in a national competition that was on the same level as what we call VICA in vocational education. It's not the only winner I've had. Over my 18-year tenure, I've had probably 15 to 20 national winners, all in the metal fabrication field. I'm running for trustee for Smith School because it was the first school of its kind in the nation. It actually has a tie with Smith College in a very strange way. Oliver Smith left all his wealth to founding his trusts and charities, but part of his wealth went to his nephew and niece, and it was his niece, Sophia Smith, that created Smith College. The family had no heirs, immediate heirs, and it seemed that there was a philanthropic mission that they had in the work that they tried to do. I hold Smith School dear to my heart and have looked at it as a philanthropic association originally designed for the education of indigent boys and girls, but we know better today in the 21st century that it's really designed to educate everyone. In that mission, and as my mission as a challenger, I want to propose some new programs at Smith School. And as history repeats itself, some of these programs are old, but I'm bringing them back again, so they're new. I would like to see the farm utilized to teach organic farming and gardening so that everyone in Northampton and the surrounding communities can participate in the school. I'd also like to restore the LPN program.
Another chance with the question. Okay, now we'll do the school district large people. Number one, David.
My name is David Kotz. I'm serving my first term on the Northampton School Committee. If I'm re-elected, I will continue to support a broad education. That means an education that includes the arts, music, physical education, international languages, as well as the traditional core academic subjects. I'm very pleased that we were able to reinstate phys ed at the elementary schools just recently for the spring. A second issue that I believe is very important is class size. Class size is a key determinant of the quality of education. We have to keep class size at reasonable levels. Class size is important at the high school level. It's even more important at the middle school level, and still more important at the elementary school level, where students are less independent and need more immediate interaction with teachers. The effect of class size on educational performance is backed up by some very solid educational research. Third, I will strive to protect against the potential harmful effects of the overuse of standardized testing. Federal and state mandates require that standardized tests be given every year, 3rd through 8th grade and 10th grade. And while standardized tests have a place in the school system, they're being overused. And one of the harmful effects of this is that it tends to marginalize subjects which are not on the test. Only English and math are currently tested. Secondly, it tends to foster bad teaching techniques, sole reliance on drill and memorization. We should provide an education that develops young people's ability to think for themselves and to express themselves in writing, speaking, music, art, and so forth. These are things that cannot be tested on a multiple choice test. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don, I guess you're next.
I'd like to save some time for questions, so I'm going to just tell you, my name is Donald Palmisano. I'm running for school committee at large. I was a teacher for 36 years in Northampton High School. I just recently retired. I had a wonderful career. I want to get on the school committee in order to change the focus. I think that once I find myself in that seat, I'll be able to make decisions that will be for the benefit of the student. I've had 6,500 students in my 36-year career. You entrusted those students to me 36 years ago. I'm asking you to entrust the entire school system to me now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Catherine?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Foote-Newman, and I am a candidate for the at-large school committee position. I am here tonight because I have always found local politics to be interesting and have always tried to keep abreast of local issues. Even prior to having children, I have tried to be aware of the issues facing our schools and our community. I voted in favor of both overrides to improve the facilities in which our children are educated, and I continue to support public education. As many of you may know, I have been an advocate opposing the school committee's decision last year to charge families for busing. I served on the ad hoc transportation committee, and my husband and I continued to lobby intensively for that policy initiative to be rescinded. While we were somewhat successful in our endeavor, in that children in grades kindergarten through 5 no longer pay a fee, that experience galvanized my commitment to serve the schools in a more meaningful way. During this process, I grew increasingly frustrated by what I perceived to be a system that lacked any means by which parents' concerns could be heard and discussed in a meaningful way. I would like to see a mechanism put in place to rectify this situation. If elected, I will bring to the school committee many years of financial and budgeting experience. For the last 10 years, I have successfully managed the business aspects of the construction firm that my husband and I own together. I am comfortable and I understand how budgets work. I am keenly aware that a budget is a malleable entity that may be viewed from many different angles and one that ultimately comes down to priorities. I am asking that you vote for me on November 4th so that I may have the opportunity to give back to the community, which has given so much to me and my family. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now, for the questions for the trustees for Smith Voc, let's just go backwards and begin with John Lynn. The question is, significant improvements have been made at Smith Vocational High School. What other improvements need to be made, and how can you get these done?
There have been significant improvements made in the physical plant at Smith School. These have come out of necessity. Recently, $600,000 was spent to repair the boiler system in the school, which is a 27-year-old school. I have a great deal of concern. This is the second major problem with the capital improvement that we've had at the school in the last 10 years. Recently, we spent close to $800,000 to repair the roofs of the new buildings. I believe that the most important significant change that can occur at Smith School is that we can somehow return to the enrollment that the school was built and designed for. There were 700 students at Smith School in the early 1990s and 80s, and today there are only less than 450 students. I believe that the way to accomplish this would be to look to some of the more excellent school programs throughout the country. In my role as a vice president of a national board, I've been able to do that. I believe that, again, the utilization of the farm to teach organic farming and gardening to anyone in Northampton and the surrounding communities, to even run a summer program for adults and a summer camp for young children. I believe in restoring the evening adult program and the postgraduate program that at one time was a very viable part of the school, and in other communities is a very viable and working system. I believe in restoring the LPN program, and I just recently in Cincinnati and in Newark, Ohio, was able to see an early child education program at both schools where there was a fully operational campus child care center. I'd also like to see the creation of some new secondary programs. Firefighting and emergency medical service, which are an up-and-coming field at the secondary level, and radio and television production.
Okay, thank you.
We have had several improvements at the school recently, and in the past couple of years, we have been renovating our farmhouse, which will be done hopefully in January or February and will be rented out. We have the new heating system that Mr. Lins referred to. We've established a National Honor Society for our students as well as the VICA organization. One of our main concerns is updating our buildings. This is going to be a huge amount of money, which at this point I do not see us being able to raise to significantly redo our buildings. But what we are trying to do, and we are constantly trying to improve our school with our CAD/CAM lab that we did so much of the work ourselves. We will continue with all that we have done so far. Our first priority is to really keep our classes and our shops supplied. With the tight budgets that we have, that's the best that we can do right now. We need to keep them up to date, and we need to keep the kids on top of their classroom and their shop work to pass MCAS. With the money that we have to spend, we have been doing this very wisely and hope that we will continue. Thank you.
Okay, John?
More students are receiving state licenses in their shop areas, and more are also meeting national and state standards. I feel the upgrading of the shops has contributed to this, along with the improved discipline on school grounds. All students and teachers must wear an ID badge on campus at all times. This is to help identify people who do not belong on school property. Smith School is hosting a statewide seminar on the future of agricultural education in Massachusetts. This is to keep our program at the forefront in this area of education. With the help of the superintendent, teachers, and staff, the Board of Trustees will continue to move forward to benefit the students and the overall community. I ask for your vote on Election Day and hope you will continue to entrust the operation of the school to the present board, Barbeau, Rufia, and Cotton. Thank you.
And Marie?
Both Sue and John have already spoken about the importance of upgrading every shop to meet current standards. And there was one other thing that David asked me to mention. It's from, it speaks to a goal for the school as a whole community. As a member of the school community, I believe we must encourage non-traditional career path choices by actively working to eliminate racial, cultural, and gender biases. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. We actually have time for a question if there is one from the audience. And if not, I'll ask another one and hope for some very short answers. Yes?
Hi, I'm Barbara Ricasco, Ward 6. In all fairness to the candidates, I have a two-part question. The first part is for the incumbents. This is in reference to the only brochure and Gazette article. Both of them mentioned closing out the candidate. You want to remain the three of you on. Why would you not want someone new on the board that could benefit the school with his knowledge as an insider of the school and also his knowledge of vocational education?
All right, that's for the trustees of Smith Voc, and I guess everybody gets to answer it, and I think we'll start
That
with...
was for the incumbents.
Well, in fairness, everybody gets it. All four candidates always get a chance, even if John doesn't want to say anything.
My question is, are we supposed to have the other school committee members answer their question before we take questions from the floor, or do we, because we're using up time?
Oh, I am very sorry. I messed up. Thank you very much, Marie. I didn't get a chance to... I'm sorry, that question doesn't get asked.
Okay.
And it's entirely my fault for messing up. The school committee at large... by the way, if we can, at the end of this, we can run upstairs in the hallway, in the lounge area, and talk more informally, or formally. The school committee at large, I'm very sorry. Their question is, in these times of very tight finances, what programs or aspects of our school district would you hold on to no matter what? And what further cuts would you allow to be made? And I think we can just go in, since I said I'd mess up the order, Why don't we start with Donald and just go to three?
We're going to go reverse order.
Okay, reverse order. All right, so Catherine, you go first.
Okay, I was perfectly willing to forego having to answer this question, but since somebody noticed that, I would like to echo David's sentiments in his opening statement that we need to continue to provide a broad educational opportunity to all our students. So I think that no matter what, that would be one of the goals that I would try to achieve in these difficult budget times, meaning that I would like to preserve low class sizes, I would like to preserve the specials, art, PE, and music, as well as expand certain elements of our educational opportunities. Things that we must leave untouched would be any mandated programs from the state. Those obviously we can't touch. About further cuts to be made. Without having seen a budget, I can't really speak to this. On the face of it, it looks as though we cannot cut any further, that our budget has been cut enough. But without having seen it, I can't say that definitively. I would advocate for no cuts to anything that is student-related, and perhaps we could look to the superintendent's office to cut if need be.
Okay, Donald.
It's the same question that's always asked when you're running for school committee, especially in these times. It's always about the budget. I agree with Kathy that it's difficult to talk about what you'd cut and what you'd add into a budget when you haven't seen one. I do know one thing. I've been there and I've done that. When they talk about class sizes, I know what it's like to be in a class of 38 students. I know that it's not just been 1 year. I've been in a class with 35, 38 students for a total of maybe the last 5 years, always during the year. One class was that large. Very difficult, I can tell you. I've been there. It's very difficult. That needs to be looked at. Class size at no matter what level is important. I think it's important even in the college level. If I had to cut something, I would cut administrative costs. I would look at assistance to assistance to assistance. I would also look at the frivolity of workshops and workshops that included travel. When you have a household budget, you don't cut the bread and the milk at the beginning. You cut the things that you can do without. The shows, the lecture series that you might go on that you have to pay on. Even though they're useful, and they are useful, you've got to make a cut. I would not cut textbooks, and I certainly wouldn't cut supplies that indicate that out of that program comes also the textbooks. I've taught a class also without a textbook. Very hard. So rather than just speak to rhetoric, I want to be on the school committee and do something about it, because I've been there and I've done that.
And David Les.
Well, there's a background to this. For the last several years, the cost of providing the same level of services has gone up in dollar terms faster than the revenues available to the school system have gone up. And so we've been cutting for years. I agree that the first place you cut is in administration, and we've done that for the last several years. We've cut several $100,000 out of administration. We've lost a whole bunch of positions. If I thought there was anything there left to cut, other than having the superintendent spend his day answering the phone for anyone who called the school system, I would favor it, but I can't see anything left in the central administration that could be cut. It's bare. And we spend less on administration than well below the average for the Commonwealth. I think a key principle for what to save is programs. That I think all of our programs are important, and if you eliminate a program, it's liable never to come back when times improve. So I think it's better to keep programs and operate the rate at which, reduce the rate of operation of the program somewhat. For example, we've been running elementary phys ed at half-time, and that's a way to try to save the program. Some things that perhaps could be cuts. There are some small classes at the high school which can be given every other year so that students will be able to take it, but we can save some resources. Early identification of learning problems in the early elementary grades can save a lot of money later on in special ed intervention. Those are the kind of things that would help. But really, to be honest, the only answer, if we want to maintain the kind of educational programs that our community wants, is to find additional sources of revenue, and the state and federal governments are the ones that ought to provide it, because they have loaded one mandate after another onto us without providing money to pay for them.
Thank you, and now we are out of time. I'd like to thank these candidates very, very much. Their names in front. Take them away, and your water glasses, and the city council candidates now come up. Okay, so we'll begin. The candidates up before you in pairs are candidates for Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, and Ward 7. And they drew numbers, and they will begin with opening statements, beginning with Scott from Ward 1.
Hello, my name is Scott Greaves, and I'm proud to be running for Ward 1. If elected, I plan to be listening and responding to all the questions and concerns from the people inside my ward. I know there are some people who feel that they haven't been listened to, and I promise, if elected, I'll do the best job I can to respond to any concern that you do have. The second thing that I plan to do, and I think this is so important, is just to help out the schools. I mean, we almost lost some really essential programs this year, and it's time that we get out there and actively fundraise, and that's what I plan to do. If elected, I'm going to be giving $2,000 of my city council wage back to Northampton schools. I'm not going to be just a chatterbox asking all the residents of Northampton to help out and do some fundraising and help us out so we can get these programs back in, or save these programs from being taken away. I'm actually going to be actively going out and fundraising with you. It's so important that we keep these programs. Mozart, he learned to play the piano at 3 years old. What if he didn't have that piano at 3 years old? We wouldn't have them. We have to give the same access to gym, music, and art to our kids. I mean, the world could be missing out on the next Mozart if we fail to do that. And of course, our kids could be missing out on a great opportunity. The school is just, it really is important to me. I went to Jackson Street School. I guess, you know, at the time, maybe I took these kinds of things for granted, but I know how important they are now. And I think together with this, some really powerful fundraising and collecting the delinquent taxes out there, I know that we've just collected $150,000. I know that we can do it. I know we can save these programs, and it's going to, you know, release a lot of strain on a lot of other people who won't have to be cut. The firemen, the policemen who are out there working their best to keep us safe, and it'll help keep us from doing a Proposition 2.5 also, which helps out longtime residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
My name is Bill Dwight. I'm the incumbent on Ward 1 City Councilor, Bill Dwight. What I'm asking is for the opportunity and the privilege to continue to serve one more term. As an incumbent, you basically either spend your time apologizing for what you've done or not done, or lauding all your triumphs and everything else. And I feel disingenuous doing both. My record's out there for what it's worth, and I hope and trust that you find it's good enough to qualify for another term. And I'll leave the rest of the time up for us to have questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Joe?
Hi, my name's Joe Wilhelm. I'm
Ward
running for
2.
City Council for Ward 2, which is an open seat because Fran Volkman has elected not to seek re-election. I moved to Northampton in 1974, and like many other people who did that, I found I could not afford to live in Northampton. I had to live somewhere else. I actually got my house into the city in 1991, but I've been here ever since '74. And all of that time, wherever I am, I dig right in and I try and get involved with the local government. I served on the Water Commission. I served 6 years on the Select Board in Williamsburg. When I moved down to Northampton, the citizens were kind enough to elect me to the Council of Governments, where I served for 12 years. I am now serving as an elected member of the Hampshire County Retirement Board, where I oversee the investment of $106 million. I'm an attorney. I practice here in the city. I also have a master's degree in management, and just to make sure I don't miss anything, I have a master's degree in American history from UMass in Amherst. As you see, I'm always out there trying to do my thing. And I hear many people tell you that they want to be elected to this or that because they want to give something back. I honestly feel like I've been doing my part. I want to be elected because I enjoy these things. I enjoy serving on boards. I enjoy solving problems in a circumstance where you're dealing with your colleagues. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I think I'm getting pretty good at it. Most people think that I'm value added. I have sent a mailing out to pretty much everybody in the district. And in that, I point out that as a selectman, I hired the first woman ever to be hired as a fire chief in the Commonwealth, as a police chief in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She was inexperienced. We had some problems. I ended up as her sole support and ended up losing the next election on that issue, and she was instantly fired. So the moral of that is, give me another chance, guys. We can do it better here.
Okay, and now speaking for Paul Spector.
Hi, my name's Jane Cross. I'm Paul's wife, and I'm here to represent him tonight. And I'm reading a statement that he wrote. Paul would like to thank the League for sponsoring this debate and regrets being unable to be here. He wants you all to know that he's not trying to emulate the tactics of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but a teaching commitment that he made last summer couldn't be broken. If elected, Paul will bring a unique set of skills to the council. An expert in organizational development, Paul has worked with cities, boards of education, and nonprofit groups on long-range planning and short-term problem solving. At Yale, he teaches conflict resolution to managers and supervisors. His current project with Meriden, Connecticut is especially relevant. He's helping that city's mayor and city council develop a strategic housing plan that balances development needs and the needs to preserve open space. Since his days as a student at Amherst College, Paul has championed progressive causes, like Take Back the House, a national effort to elect Democratic congressional candidates. He was board chair of Northampton's National Priorities Project, co-chair of the Northampton Kennedy Campaign. He worked on the Northampton High School Override Campaign and was an original visionary of the Northampton-New Haven Rail Trail. And I'd like to just mention two issues Paul feels passionately about. First, he believes our schools must be fully funded. Losing quality education denies our children the learning environment they deserve, and we can't afford the schools to deteriorate. Second, we're blessed to be a city with open spaces within easy reach of our neighborhoods. Paul supports smart growth to maintain the natural beauty and ecological integrity of our undeveloped parcels. On larger parcels of open land, we must zone for cluster housing and make sure other restrictions are in place to preserve this asset of our life. Paul asks the people of Ward 2 for their vote for City Council on November 4th.
Thank you, David. Now this is Ward 3.
Hi, I'm David Marshall, and I'm running for the Ward 3 City Council seat. I've lived here in Northampton for nearly 20 years and got interested in running for this seat because I want to bring an additional sense of urgency to the council regarding our funding of education here in Northampton. I have 3 kids in the Northampton public school system, so I have a really vested interest in making sure that our school system stays as good as it has been and remains something that people have come to expect here in Northampton, and that's a good quality education for our kids. Beyond that, I think that the job of the ward counselor is to listen to what's going on in the ward, to hear what people have for issues, and to help them in resolving their issues, to be responsive, to be available, and I intend to be all of those things if given a chance as the Ward 3 City Councilor. Thanks very much.
And next, Marilyn.
Hi everyone, I'm Marilyn Richards, and I'm also running for Ward 3 City Council. First of all, a big thank you to the League. Over the last few weeks, I've met many of my neighbors, and I found that we have one thing in common. We all love Northampton and what Northampton has to offer. However, many folks are scared that it won't last and that our quality of life will suffer. I attended a meeting at the Walter Salvo House where our seniors were angry and frightened that the rent was going up and the bus fares to the supermarket were outrageous. I met a young professional couple who's active in city activities who can't find a house here. They're renting right now and they can't find one to buy. These are the kind of people we need to keep in Northampton. I met the leadership of the fairgrounds who want to balance the agricultural focus with good financial health. And I visited the airport and saw the city from way up high in a hot air balloon, and it looks great up there too. I met small business owners, farmers, new residents. We all want the same thing. We want Northampton to maintain its character, but to keep moving. I believe I'm the right candidate to, with a proven track record, to be elected your next Ward 3 City Council person. I've worked hard for the last 10 years. I've been almost continuously on various city committees. I serve at a statewide level on the Mass Women's Political Caucus, and I'm willing to work hard for you. I see my main priority is to work for you, and I promise that I'll be accessible. I've been accessible in my campaign, and I will continue to be accessible. In my professional career, I work at Cooley Dickinson Hospital, and I watch after the health of individuals on a daily basis. I hope now to take a larger role and work for the health of the city. For proven leadership experience, hard work, and dedication, please vote for me for City Council for Ward 3. Thank you.
And next, Ward 7.
My name is Raymond W. LaBarge. I'm the City Councilor from Ward 7. I've worked for the last 16 years as a city councilor in the city of Northampton. My first experience as an elected official was I was on the school committee for 6 years, and I also was elected chair. From there, I went to the city council, and I spent 16 years working for the city, Ward 7 in the city, and also was elected chairman of the president of the city council. I worked for county government for 12 years, and I was also elected chairman. My knowledge was very helpful in every position I held. I also worked in the courts for 4 years, and I was helpful. I volunteered over 10 years of my life to help the kids that had to do public service, and I worked with them for 10 years. I want to return, and I hope that my knowledge and experience is very helpful. It counts. It sure does count over the years, and I'm very happy to do it again. But I hope that those people still support me like they have for the last 16 years, and I will return as their city councilor. So I'm asking them to vote for me again. Thank you very much.
And Ellen?
I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. My name is Ella Smolinski, and I'm running for Ward 7 City Council. I have lived here, worked here, and volunteered here for 23 years. I'm the past director of Northampton Adult Day Health Care Center. I took that program out of the red and into the black. I developed a partnership with the Smith Vocational Health Occupations class. It allowed those students an opportunity to explore the field of health occupations. It also allowed me to increase my services to the folks at adult daycare by increasing my staffing. It was through partnerships, looking at administrative costs, taking a program out of the red into the black. I've also went on to work at Project Head Start. I was a social service coordinator for Project Head Start. While at Head Start, I received the Council on Social Service Award. I received this award for encouraging families to create self-sufficiency. As many of you know, families involved in Head Start are less likely to be involved in criminal offenses and often go on to college. Many of my past parents are now teachers with Project Head Start. I am invested in the community. I participate in events in the community. I am a volunteer trained decisional trainer with the Hampshire House of Correction. I teach inmates decision-making skills. I believe tonight was a very difficult decision for me. Someone who wants to be involved in the community, I really looked forward to the United States Air Force Band celebration, rather concert. But again, decision-making, seeing the situation clearly, knowing what I want, looking at the possibilities, exploring those possibilities, and decided. I decided to be here tonight. This was an opportunity. Again, my thanks to the League of Women Voters and Jeff Zomack for being here to telecast this event so that everyone throughout the city would have the opportunity to learn about all of us. Thank you. Vote for Ella Smolinski. Vote for someone fiscally responsible yet socially aware. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. And now questions for Ward 1 for the two candidates. If the noise ordinance is enacted, how would you propose to enforce it? Can it be effectively enforced? And if it is not passed, what can be done to reduce noise in the city? Reverse order. Reverse order, if you can remember what that is.
Well, I'm sure that this question for Ward 1 is a complete coincidence.
Right.
Actually, the proposed noise ordinance, it currently, as I understand, is more or less endorsed or sponsored, in fact, by every council with the exception of one, and that's yours truly. My difficulties with the proposed noise ordinance, or any noise ordinance actually for the most part, is philosophical and also practical, I think. I'm concerned because, well, first let me say that actually I have to acknowledge the process by which this evolved. This process was right, proper, and exemplary. It was, I wish all grassroots movements worked like this, and with Councilor Dostal and Richard Abuza basically leading the fray, because it was done without rancor, it was done considerately, and I got 1 minute left, so I'm going to move on to what my opposition is. My concern is that it actually creates an added layer of insulation of civic discourse. A lot of these things, there's not a person in this room, there's not a person in this city, not a person probably on the planet who isn't annoyed by some aspect of noise that intrudes into their life. As we cope and try to deal with these noises, I think it's essential that we do it on a civic level as opposed to relying on the already strained resources of the police. It also, my concern is it promotes a sense of distance from our neighbors. And it's my hope that actually it doesn't pass, or a very much more modified version does.
Scott, your turn.
You know, being a value-neutral person, you know, I see both sides of this, and it's really hard to take a central view. I guess, you know, I do see the misuse for it. I see how, you know, police could be pulling kids over for suspicion of drugs, but, you know, in actuality, they're saying that, you know, they're playing their boombox too loud. You know, and there's already a distrust that many of the kids my age and even younger have for the police, and I don't think that we should increase that. On the other side of things, I know that there are some very, very hardworking people out there trying to provide for their families, trying to put food on the table. They want to get to bed at night. They don't want to be listening to all this stuff going on outside, this stuff going on with their neighbors. And, you know, you have to respect that, and I think everyone deserves a good night's sleep. Basically what it comes down to is, as a politician, we're just supposed to represent the people. If the people want this passed, I think that it needs to be passed. But with one change, I do think that there shouldn't be a $50 first-time fine. I think that there should be a first-time warning. I think that this will help keep the cops from being tied up in court. And I also think that, you know, what our central goal is to lessen the noise. And the central goal is to lessen the noise and not to penalize people and take money away from them. So I think that'll help out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ward 1. Ward 2, what do you, as non-councilors who have not been involved in this before, what do you think about the state hospital ballot questions, and how will your decisions as a city councilor be affected by non-binding results?
Okay, although the ballot questions are not binding, they're obviously very significant. Funders want to see community support on a project like this, and a no vote could have serious financial consequences. Those who would vote no on ballot question number 1 have legitimate concerns about traffic and overdevelopment. For years, Paul has been an advocate for city planning to prevent sprawl. As a matter of fact, when I was in labor with our daughter, he was rushing out making phone calls from the hospital because he was producing a fundraising concert for New Haven Northampton Rail Trail. And in his current work with Meriden, Connecticut, he's encouraging this city to adopt smart growth policies to prevent sprawl. If elected, he will vigorously support efforts to protect open space. However, voting no on question 1 is not a way to achieve worthy goals of preservation and sensible development. We cannot and will not stop all development, and Hospital Hill is actually an intelligent plan for moving forward. As a kid who grew up in a housing project and experienced a family struggle to find a decent place to live, Paul supports the plan's efforts to provide affordable and low-income housing. If we fail to plan for low-income housing, and the city drops below the state-mandated 10% level, which we're close to doing, we lose local control of where and how low-income housing is built. The plans for Hospital Hill balance our values for the preservation of open space, the prevention of sprawl, and the need for housing. Paul encourages a yes vote on question 1. On saving Old Main. Old Main is a magnificent building. We don't know anyone who doesn't want to save Old Main. For years, concerted efforts have been made to obtain funding to renovate the building. But historic preservation grants were turned down, money was not allowed to be diverted from demolition to renovation, and a private developer could not be found who would take the project on. So saving Old Main truly needs to be framed as, at what cost are we willing to save Old Main? At a time when our schools are struggling, for example, our daughter at NHS is using a grammar book that identifies the sound of music as the hot new movie. And we're stretching just to fund essential city services. Is saving Old Main really a top priority? We should continue to search for a private developer, but I don't believe city resources should be used. We need to vote no on question 2.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm Joe Wilhelm again, and to some extent I'm in agreement with my opposition here. I must tell you, however, that part of my vote yes on question 1 is tinged with skepticism that they will ever be able to get the whole program off the ground. I think the economic situation has changed quite a bit since it was originally designed. But if they do succeed, then it will be a good program. Saving Old Main, everybody would love to save Old Main. The ballot question implies that doing minimal repairs would probably cost $1.52. My guess is that it would be closer to the cost that the Smiths Folk School spent on their roof, which was $800,000. And since we're in a serious zero-sum game right now, that $800,000 would come out of somebody's pocket. And since we put almost everything into the schools, there they would go. So I don't think that we can afford it. What I would like to see instead is I would like to see us design a memorial up on Hospital Hill, possibly on the current site of Old Main, to remind folks, future generations, of what has taken place up there and how important it is. And we have the resources to do that, which would be a much more modest project. The other part of this question, though, is what would I do if Ward 2 votes heavily to save Old Main? Well, I don't consider this a question of conscience. I guess if everybody in Ward 2 wanted to save Old Main, I'd vote to save Old Main. I'm hopeful that they won't do that, and in truth, I will tell you that I would be astonished if Ward 2 heavily voted to save Old Main.
Thank you. Now, Ward 3, your question. Would you support the construction of a new parking garage, which will likely be on the edge of Ward 3? And what problems might there be for your ward?
I'm answering that one first. One of the things I really appreciate about Northampton is its vital downtown. And I think if you ask half the store owners in most restaurants and coffee shops, they know me by first name. So I think it's really a great place. We shop there, we eat there. We have to be able to park there. There are issues, however. Traffic and parking, are major problems. We need to provide spaces for our residents and for folks that come from downtown. Now, without the details of how much it would cost or exactly where it would be, I'm assuming that we would work together on a plan that would have it fitted well into wherever it went architecturally. And there's one important thing that I really want to add. Coupled with any kind of parking garage, there really has to be a focus on multimodal transportation and good buses. And we worked a lot on this when I was chairman of the Transportation Committee. So if we encourage transportation, Other than cars, I think this will alleviate the possible bottlenecks, traffic congestion that might come as a result of a parking garage. But we have to accommodate our downtown businesses to stay vital.
Thank you, David.
Well, as an attorney and a negotiator and a former business owner, I always like to know what all the details are before I give a thumbs up or down on any question. But I can see a number of advantages for Ward 3 to the construction of a parking garage, and some potential drawbacks. Certainly advantages could be easing the parking problems that we have on some of the narrow local streets where people are parking side by side right along each side of the street, and it might free up some space for our local residents to be able to park in front of their own homes. Possible drawbacks could be drawing some more traffic to our ward, and traffic has been a problem in our area. But assuming that those details could be worked out and funding could be found for such a project, I think it has some potential merit, and would like to see what the details are of such a plan, where it would go, who it would affect, and also listen to the people who it's going to affect most, the people who live closest to those areas where the construction's going to be, where the traffic pattern will change, and in order to really give a definitive answer on whether I would support it, I would need to know those things. Thank you very much.
Okay, now on to Ward 7. Let me abbreviate this question a little. Recent zoning proposals that are designed to preserve more open space in outlying areas turned out to be controversial and were tabled by the City Council. If you favor those zoning changes, how would you propose to change the minds of the public and get them passed? And if you don't favor the changes, why not?
Zoning is always subject to change. And sometimes it's very difficult when you're on one end of, it's a double-edged sword, you've heard me say in the past. It's important that everyone is involved when these changes occur. Seeing the situation clearly, that's something we must do. When I was having door-to-door conversations, people feel disconnected. Although there is opportunities at the open mic at City Council, the planning board, the conservation boards, these are places where people can come to speak also. Zoning, preserving smart growth and development in the city is very important. By smart growth, I mean using what we already have, commercial space that's already there. I'm all for development of King Street. Very happy to hear about Dave's Pet Food City coming to King Street. I also see a need for preserving open space and preserving our wetlands. So again, I would talk about to my constituency. I talk to them, the people in my area, to find out how they feel. This is a partnership with the people. Again, see the situation clearly, know what you want, look at the possibilities, explore those possibilities, and decide. That's what I would do in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, and Ray.
I attended 2 public hearings on these zone changes proposals. And then I attended the planning department. The residents in these areas were in an uproar over the proposed changes. And a lot of them were very unhappy with the proposed change, and I kind of agree that when they decided to drop it, I think it was the winner for the people who objected and were protecting their neighborhood. So I don't think I would favor any change. I would leave it the way it is. Table it and forget it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we do have time for questions now. So if there are questions from the audience. Yes?
So the question goes to all the city councilors?
Yes, unless you have, I think if it can, I think it would be a good idea.
And the question would focus on the Hospital Hill development with 207 total housing units, as well as 60 to 80 housing units for a assisted living facility being planned. If these zoning changes that were just mentioned were to pass, how would you folks deal with the potential monopoly situation concerning housing development? The Hospital Hill development, 200 to 250 housing units, may dominate the community.
This is a question for all the councilors. If you can keep it down to less than 2 minutes, that would be really nice. Try to make it a minute, and let's speak.
First of all, Daryl, there is no proposed zoning that would actually qualify and restrict that. So it's a hypothetical that's not an appropriate analysis, I don't think. It in fact actually generates kind of a red herring question. To speak more to the issue, I think there's going to be a forum to discuss this whole thing more in depth. And if I can suggest that, another question that might be, I don't want to try and avoid it. It's just that it's a hypothetical that doesn't apply, and there is a whole forum that's going to be dedicated to this very issue. And I think, and in fact, these guys already talked to this. So, I think it'd be nice if we could entertain a different question, possibly. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, that's a proposal. Would anyone else on the stage like to speak to that question? Or should we ask for another question? 2 people have spoken already. Okay, looks like we'll ask for another question. And I'll remind you that the forum that Bill mentioned is going to take place next Tuesday night at JFK at 7 o'clock. And it will be entirely questions from the audience. Yes?
Our problems of finances have 2 sides, expenditures and revenues. How would you address the problem of revenues? What do you think is the most efficient way to increase the revenues of the city budget?
And that's everybody's question. Phil had a chance. Why don't we? If you want to, Scott, you do it. Or do you want to do? You can wait a while.
I'll go first, address it very quickly. The challenges, of course, that you referred to are trying to maintain a balance of increasing revenue and reducing impacts on the community. And we speak in broad terms in that respect. Speak specifically to generate the revenue, to encourage businesses to come here, and a broad spectrum of businesses, not just retail, because we're retail heavy in this community, but we have social service programming. But to try and we have to improve the infrastructure to promote cleaner businesses with good wages to sustain people. We need, not only as a community, but as a state, a considerable expansion of the revenue growth. And, short of praying, the most practical application is that we lobby as a community, and we sell ourselves as a community an ideal place to live and raise your children in good schools, in a safe community with sane people behaving like grown-ups. And in fact, we have that, and we are an exemplar.
Sorry?
No, I'm going to pass on.
I'd like to answer that if I could.
Okay. Well, should we just go down the row? So you will definitely get a chance to answer, Ray, but we'll let Joe try first.
I think we have we have 2 proposals on the table right now. One is the possibility of getting permission to have a meals tax for the city alone. I think it's a good idea. I've spent the last 2 days in Springfield at a conference checking out their restaurants, and I can assure you that we don't have anything to worry about. If our lunch tabs go up by 20 cents each, I think that will result in possibly 1 person a year not eating here. I think that's one of our strengths, is to have that, and I think that's a good place to go. The other macro effort is the Hospital Hill. If it works and everything gets built up there, there'll be an enormous amount of new growth and new tax revenue coming to the city. I think that there are other possibilities that we need to go into, different ways of doing business to lessen the outflow, but those are the 2 currently on the table for influx Okay, the other thing is to remember that when we, and when I say we, I mean in this context, all of the cities and towns of the Commonwealth. When we go to Boston and say, where's the local aid and what is it going for? The answers that we are getting are by no means clear and straightforward, okay? There are things in what is called the local aid budget that you would be astonished are in the local aid budget. The district attorney's office, for one, okay? You don't think of that as local aid, that's in that budget. So when they say they're giving us billions, they're lying. And I think that we can go into Boston and start with truth in advertising and to what's actually in the local aid budget. And when we can finally get down, I think that we can have a statewide consensus that we'll get more money for all the cities and towns. Now, all these things take time, they all take effort, they all take going down to Boston, been there many times, fought with them for the last 14 years on the Council of Governments, previously known as the County Commission, and that's one of the things we've got to do, and we've all got to get together on it.
I'm sorry to say that I can't answer questions for Paul. He's done far more research on all these issues than I have, has gone door to door for the past few months talking to residents of Ward 2. And if anyone in here is from Ward 2, feel free to call him. His number is 563-0026. And you're welcome to call him and he'll answer any questions you have.
My concern about looking for funds, I think that if we could correct the formula that we're tied up in, it would be in our benefit. The formula has been out of whack for years. Another thing is people have been talking about an override. And I don't hear good news out there about an override because there's 5 overrides we've had in the last few years. And if we have another one, people don't realize it, it becomes a permanent part of our base. That's bad. But during the budget here, I proposed a cut, $74,000. Fell on deaf ears because I felt if we did a cut then, it'd be easier for this coming year, but they don't think the way I do, but maybe I'm wrong, but I think we have to make some cuts coming year because it's going to be very bad this coming year. Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue with David.
I especially like the idea of the meals tax. I think that's a very creative idea, and I think creative ideas are the kinds of things that are going to have to be entertained when looking at new revenue sources. I think that even the possibility, if the meals tax somehow is thwarted, that looking at the possibility of a citywide sales tax or some other creative device that will allow us to avoid the possibility of an override. I think additional revenue coming in from the Hospital Hill project and some other measured, well-considered development is potential for additional revenue. But to help make sure that our schools continue to be funded the way they ought to be and the essential services are maintained so that Northampton stays the kind of wonderful place that it has been, I think even the possibility of an override shouldn't be completely discounted. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, myself included, but Northampton's a great place and it'd be worth ponying up a little bit more if that's what has to happen. I hope it doesn't. I hope other creative methods can be used, but if that's what it takes, I believe I would be in favor. Thank you.
And Marilyn?
Thank you. I think this is a really tough question and is at the essence of what we at the city level, no matter if we're on committees or on city council or whatever, will be struggling with for the next few years. I think it's almost impossible that our revenue are going to be able to keep up with our expenses unless we do some very creative things. And also, and I don't know, I've heard about meals tax and a couple of other things, and I'm not sure how many hoops you have to get through to do that and if that's even possible. But I will say one thing. I think one of the things that we can do is fight for our fair share of state assistance out here. And I've been fighting on, in Boston for years, and I know how to do it. I know who to go to, and it's tough, but I think that's what we have to do. We have to let them know that there is a Western Mass that outside of 128 of 495, we do exist and we need our fair share out here. So I think a combination of creative ways, fighting for our fair share, and also attracting business, but business alone I don't think is going to cut it.
And Ella?
Based on conversations I've had with the constituency, we need a strong economic plan. I know the mayor knows this, and I know she's working on this. It's also important to think about progress, folks. Do you remember years ago when we had the small pharmacies and the meat markets? We now have supermarkets. I talked to the people who work in Stop and Shop. They're happy, they have good benefits, they have excellent wages. Stop and Shop provides a great tax revenue for our city. I'm sorry, I beg to differ with you. We need jobs, and I'll say the bad word, big boxes in the area. We need to place them in commercially designated areas. We need this to happen. And as far as putting the burden on the backs of the restaurant owners, I've talked to them also. It's unfair to place the burden specifically on them. I talked to a senior up on North Farms Road. She told me if it wasn't for her family helping to buy groceries for her, she'd no longer be able to reside in her home. Seniors in this city are saying no. Young families in this city are saying, I've had enough, I can't pay anymore. We have to look at everyone's situation in this city and realize that this needs to be an affordable city for all of us. So I would also say that collecting back taxes, glad to read about that tonight in the paper. Everyone needs to pay their fair share. There's no free rides here, folks. I realize that that in itself can't save our problems, but I think big business, jobs, affordable housing, it's all connected, folks. Let's make Northampton a place for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, let me ask a question before we go on, because there's a possibility we could take another question for the City Council. What I have to ask is Daniel Childs here? He's the person running against Claire Higgins for mayor. If he is not, that will certainly cut down the time that we need for the next round of candidates. So I think we could take one more question for the city councilors. Yes.
Yes. I'd like to ask a simple question. If you knew that there was a developer that wanted to use enough of the historic buildings on Hospital Hill to bring revenue into the city, would you encourage the city to tear those buildings down this winter?
Let's start at the other end with Ray Labarge. But maybe actually I should say something here. That's also the question for the forum. And so if there is another question, especially from somebody I cut off the first time through when she asked about the schools, maybe, so all those questions can be asked next week, and I'm sorry to prevent you from doing that. Yes?
Yes, hi. Back to my last question. We've had questions for the city councilors. I feel that the school committee and the board of trustees should have been allowed enough time to answer the questions so that the public can hear from them when the public has questions. I don't feel they were given enough time. I don't feel it's fair to the public. There were serious
So is that a
questions
question
that needed to be asked.
for me?
Yes.
I agree with you.
I also have a question for the trustees that they were not allowed to answer.
Yes, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about my mistake. And I also agree with you. I think everybody that is running for office deserves a lot more time in front of the camera than they're getting here tonight. And I'm very sorry. And it's partly because of the quality and the goodwill of the number of people that are running for office. I think it's really wonderful that there's so many contested races. There could have been even more. And we would have had, I don't know, we would not have been able to do it in one night. But this is just a very abbreviated chance. I hope you can talk to the people in the school committee in another place, in another forum, or privately, or in another group. And I'm sorry that I couldn't do a better job at arranging the time.
Are we here until 9?
We are here until 9. Yes. Well, let's see if we can do that after we do the other candidates then. Now, if there are any more questions, that is a good idea. There seem to be, is that true? No more questions that I'm allowing. Okay, City councilors, thank you very much. And now we have serves a chance to read a statement and also to answer the question that was provided. And I think she'll have a chance to answer other questions next week. And then we'll concentrate on city treasurer. And then if there's time, we will go back to anybody who's still around from the Smith Voc trustees or the school committee at large. Okay, so let's begin with Claire Higgins and an opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks to the League for sponsoring this tonight. I really think that these are very useful in terms of getting information out to the voters. I had an experience today when I talked to a class of college students, and I asked them where they got their information. And it's striking to me that people aren't reading newspapers the way they used to do. They are somewhat getting their information from the internet, and people don't even really watch TV for their news. So it concerns me how we have a civic discussion when people aren't using the media outlets to understand what's going on in their community. I'm hoping, thousands of people are going to be home watching Channel 15. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Anyway, just briefly, I'd like to say that I've really enjoyed being the mayor. It's not an easy job, but it's just a fascinating job, and I really love public service. I've been in public service most of my life. I was a child care worker, daycare director for many years, and have been the mayor now for 4 years. I've been very focused in the last year on the budget. I have 1 minute to sum up $58 million worth of trouble. We have a budget that is about $58 million, and revenue is going to be the issue in the coming year. How do we keep up with our expenses? Our health insurance, which is going to go up 9 to 15%. How do we honor those valuable city employees who work very hard for all of us? And we need to treat them in the way that they deserve, and we want to keep them as valued employees. And how do we continue to hold onto the valuable services that are provided for all of us, public safety, public works, and obviously the school system. So we're going to have a discussion about revenue this year. It's going to include a meals tax, it's going to include expansion of the economic tax base, and it's going to have a discussion of local taxes, since the state government is in a $2 billion hole, and the federal government has decided they can cut taxes and borrow against the future to send that check back to you. We have to have that discussion on the local level. Thank you. I'm supposed to now, I think, go right into my question.
Go right into your question. Would you like me to ask it?
Sure.
Okay. Despite current fiscal crises, Northampton is still considered a wonderful place to live, but neighboring communities have not been as fortunate. What ideas do you have about how Northampton can cooperate with surrounding towns to help the economy and well-being of the whole area?
In fact, Northampton is an economic engine for much of the area. I would say that we provide a significant base in terms of our commercial base. We have the court system here, we have the landfill here, we have the jail. We provide significant regional services right here in our city. Some of our neighbors to the south, Springfield and Holyoke in particular, are really struggling, not necessarily with state and local revenues, but with the neediness of their population. One way that the city of Northampton really has stepped up to the plate is by staying above that 10% in terms of affordable housing. We in the city of Northampton will benefit if Springfield and Holyoke are healthier. The healthier they are, the healthier we'll be. And I think that one of the critical things we have to do is to continue to provide affordable housing and opportunity to people right here in our city. When I moved to Northampton 27 years ago, or 26 years ago, you could rent an apartment and be a child care worker, thank you, and make minimum wage and still live in our community. What I'm hearing from employers here is that people are coming from further and further away to be able to work here in those critical kinds of jobs. If we want to help this whole valley, I think part of what we can do is provide affordable housing. A key for people who are struggling to get out of poverty is education. We know that from all of the studies. Education will help people get out of poverty. We have good schools, they help people get out of poverty, and children who are in integrated schools, and when I say integrated, I mean economically integrated schools where you have a range of incomes. Those children do well. Even the poorest children do better in those schools than where there's concentration of poverty. So I think affordable housing is critical in terms of the economic health of this entire valley. And this is the one area that the governor and I actually agree on. I'm kind of shocked that I agree with him, but I do agree with him.
Can I hold? Sure, just stay. Okay, now the other two drew numbers. This is for city treasurer.
Okay, I'm ready to begin.
Okay.
Am I starting?
Yes, you got the lower number.
Okay, but
So, yes, so it's the opening statement.
Time to start. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here tonight to say why I'm running for treasurer. A brief personal note, I'm a Western Mass native and I've been a resident of Northampton for 19 years. I'm a single father and a father of 4 wonderful children, all of whom attend Northampton Public Schools. I strongly believe I'm well qualified for the position of treasurer because of my education. I have a master's in business administration from UMass Amherst, and I have a law degree from Western New England College School of Law in Springfield. Most importantly, I have 16 years of professional money management experience at MassMutual. To prepare for this job, I attended the Massachusetts Collectors and Treasurers School at UMass this past August. I'm running for this office because I feel a strong commitment to public service. I want to give back something to the community that's given so much to my family and to me. Deficiencies in the Treasurer's office in recent years have been cited by the City Auditor and the Gazette. These deficiencies may be due to increased complexity and sophistication of the Treasurer's role in Massachusetts today. Regardless of the reasons for these deficiencies, we need to address them so our hard-earned tax dollars can continue to provide the services we need in these harsh budget times. We need professional money management skills in the Treasurer's office today. I strongly believe I am the right person at the right time with the right skills. I pledge in my first year to implement written operating procedures and that I will reactivate the Financial Advisory Board which monitors the Treasurer's activities. I'll do that so that I can be held accountable to you, the citizens of Northampton. We need to have confidence that our money is being managed diligently, professionally, and competently. That's why I'm running for treasurer, and that's why I'm asking you to vote for me on Tuesday, November 4th.
Thank you. And now Helen.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Helen Marusik. I was born and raised in Northampton. My husband Paul and I raised our 4 children here. I've worked in the Treasurer's office since 1986 and have served as treasurer since January of 1998. I'm an active member of the Mass Collector and Treasurers Association and also the local Franklin Hampshires Association. I'd just like to shed a few facts regarding the Treasurer's office. Most people think of it as a purely financial office, and although it's heading that way once again, it really hasn't been. Until July 1st of this year, we were in charge of the health and life insurance for all of our employees and retirees. This included overseeing yearly open enrollment, reconciling premiums, managing OBRA, filing death claims, and serving as benefit administrators for our retirees. In both 2001 and 2002, the city changed insurance carriers, and my staff and I were responsible for ensuring that approximately 1,600 people were enrolled in their new plans. For most of fiscal year ending July 1st, we were just 2 people performing the duties of 3. July 1st, benefits shifted to human resources, and our clerk's position was permanently cut. Everyday duties have priority, and without a clerk, I'm sharing the tasks of processing and distributing biweekly payroll, processing and stuffing 300 to 600 accounts payable checks weekly, accepting and depositing money from other departments. On the positive side, the office is much quieter, and it's given us a chance to focus on more financial aspects. The city has always been non-aggressive as far as tax titles, going back to 1956. Since this last June, we sent out letters to all of our delinquent tax properties, and since this time, 30 properties have redeemed, and an additional 22 owners have entered into payment agreements with the city. I'll be looking forward to continue this process and to identify properties going to land court. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now for your question, which now goes in reverse order, so Helen answers first. When Forbes Library did not receive their endowment money from the treasurer's office, there was no clear procedure for dealing with this problem. How would you go about improving the performance of the treasurer's office in the future, and how would you propose that future questions and complaints be dealt with?
First of all, the bulk of the trust funds have been invested in stocks and coupon bonds, which were invested in the 50s and 60s. This had gone through 2 previous treasurers, and this is what I had inherited. The previous treasurer had also invested some of the funds in certificates of deposit at local banks. I had not changed the investment vehicles at all, and had previously turned over income on a regular basis. After discussions with several of my colleagues, I chose to streamline the process by turning funds over to Solomon Smith Barney. Fleet Bank and All America stocks were kept in coupon bonds, which had matured were redeemed. And all the other money funds were invested into a money fund account. And Smith Barney, through their pooled investments, was able to yield a much higher return on investments than I was able to. And they're also able to give us a better account of share values instead of waiting to our yearly audit, as had been the usual process. I now receive a quarterly statement and payout from Smith Barney of all monies earned, and I can forward that directly over to the library. I do sincerely regret that payment was not made at the appropriate time, but I do like to stress that no funds were missing and that we have worked to improve the process.
And George?
Okay, first of all, with me as treasurer, there would be no problem. I would work well with all constituencies to get the job done. I'm respectful of others in all of my interactions. I've already pledged in my first year that I would implement written operating procedures so things like this won't occur. Specifically, that particular matter could be addressed in those operating procedures. This will increase the accountability of the treasurer's office. Another possible solution to this problem would be to make this position an appointed as opposed to an elected position. Bear in mind that's a decision that only the city council can address because it would require a charter change to the city's charter. As an elected position, the treasurer is accountable to the people, but in reality that accountability is ephemeral because short of a recall or gross negligence, there's no way that the people can influence the outcome or the working of the treasurer. A treasurer could be a rogue person. It's important in my mind that there be clear reporting responsibilities, a clear chain of command. As an appointed position, that would happen. In regard to zero coupon bonds that mature need to be reinvested immediately. If not, you not only suffer the loss of interest income, you suffer a decrease in the value of those due to the ravages of inflation. It's critical to stay on top of anything in the treasurer's office in regard to investment responsibilities because those are dollars that are very badly needed for this city. I'm running for this office because I have the skills and experience to operate this office correctly, and that's why I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, November 4th.
Okay, thank you. I am not sure about the procedure for asking the mayor questions at this point, since she doesn't have any opposition and we're supposed to be nonpartisan. But let me ask first if there are questions for the city treasurer candidates. Are there no questions for city treasurer candidates? Okay. Are there then questions for the mayor? Yes.
Mary Claire, you've been negotiating for some time with the owners of the former Meadowbrook Apartments to keep affordable housing in the city. These negotiations have dragged on for over 2.5 years. Now, my question to you and to the other candidate would be, what are you going to do to bring those negotiations to a speedy end and terminate the negotiations?
That's an interesting question. I wish the people I were negotiating with were here because any negotiation has 2 parties, so I think it's properly addressed to both parties. But nevertheless, we have been negotiating for over 2 years, and I think that that's a victory for us because that's 2 years that we've preserved that as affordable. It means that we've postponed any sale for 2 years. I expect that we'll have a good outcome here. We worked, as you know, John didn't identify himself, but he's a commissioner on the Housing Authority Board of Directors. We've worked with the Housing Authority to see if, in the worst scenario, if we are not able to come to some resolution, I believe we have a crisis in affordable housing in this state. The previous governor, Jane Swift, agreed with me, and the Board of Commissioners have voted to take the property by eminent domain if there is no other option. And I would not hesitate to ask that that happen if we're not successful in our negotiations. But I'm optimistic that we can negotiate an agreement. And every day that goes by, 252 units remain affordable in our community. So I don't think it's a loss.
Okay, another question? Other questions? Yes.
Mayor Ford formed the Safer Streets Task Force in 1999 after a Smith student was killed on Elm Street. 20 people participated on that task force, which in July 2000 issued a final report which contains about 10 pages of recommendations to make our streets safer. Some of these recommendations involve little or no cost to the city. Aside from the formation of the Transportation and Parking Commission and new crosswalks at Smith College, the Safer Streets program has languished for the past 3 years. Could you comment, Mayor, on when we could expect that some of those recommendations might be implemented to make our streets safer?
Well, I have to admit that I'm not sure exactly what recommendations you're talking about, but let me talk about what we have been trying to do. Given the fiscal situation that we've been in, my first priority has been to hold police and fire as harmless as possibly can, even though we've cut in every department. We've cut 10% of the city's workforce in the last 2 years. And I have not cut uniformed personnel in either police or fire. So that's for number one in terms of safety in the streets. I've instituted, with the help of the Capital Improvements Committee and the Finance Committee of the City Council, a procedure to move ahead on capital improvements that is forward-looking as opposed to catch as catch can. So we've made a decision to stay at a certain percentage of our budget that we're spending on capital improvements, and that includes, for the first time, spending some money on new sidewalks in our community, which we haven't built in a very long time. I think sidewalks are going to be critical to any movement on safe streets. Smith College here is cooperating with us on the design of a sidewalk for Bridge Road, a very, very dangerous stretch of in our city. We're working in other areas as well on sidewalks. And finally, I was hoping, and I continue to hope, that the Transportation Committee will work to coordinate the approach to safety on our streets. And that's the goal, I think, of that committee, and I have very much faith in them that they'll be able to do that. It includes a lot of very, very committed, solid individuals on that group.
Are there other questions? Yes.
I have a question for the mayor. Do you support the override, and what are your plans when it doesn't pass?
I didn't hear the second part of your question.
What are your plans when it does not pass?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for that question. I think we need to start talking about revenue. I'm hoping that the state will have some increase in revenue next year, but I have an article here that says they're $2 billion in the hole going into next year. So I don't expect that we're going to see new money on the state level. As I said, we've cut the workforce 10% in the city. We have doubled the contribution on health insurance that our city employees pay. I think we've done a lot of trimming in terms of trying to keep the budget, keep the gap between what we want and what the dollars we have available. I think if we're going to do an override, we have to have a lot more conversation across the city about it. But if we're to do one, we need to package it with every single senior tax break that we possibly can, because Proposition 2.5 doesn't recognize the fact that people who bought their houses when it cost a fraction of what it costs now, their income hasn't kept up with the cost of housing. We have to look at all those senior tax breaks that we possibly can. And we have to be clear about what are the drivers in our budget that are increasing our costs. Number one is health insurance. Our health insurance is going up 9 to 15% a year. In order to be competitive in terms of hiring good people to work for us, we have to offer health insurance. Second is, over time, is going to be wages, because we, again, in order to be able to hire people that can work for us, we're going to have to offer competitive wages. if an override doesn't pass, then we're going to have to trim back on some things that I think people feel pretty strongly that a community should have, including things like school busing, including things like police and fire and other those things. Those are the core of the city. The budget, our budget, 58% of our budget is education. 15%, I think it's 15% is public safety. 5% is the Department of Public Works. 11% is debt services. Are not going to actually all add up because I don't have the chart with me. I have to check it, but I think they're pretty close. 5% is general government.
Are there other questions? Well, thank you very much. And I do think we have time to, if we have other people from the trustees for Smith Vote that are still here. Were there questions? I thought there were none. Has anyone changed their mind? Are there any other treasurer questions? Okay. Thank you very much. And let's recall the people that now, thank you. You get to ask your question over again.
Thank you very much for...
Well, I'm glad we had the time to do it.
Great. In all fairness to both the challenger and the trustees, it's a two-part question. The first part is for the incumbents. And in reference to a brochure and a Gazette article, you mentioned that you want to keep